Very funny.
We now give you our brand new little sweetheart of swing.
You're listening to Stay Tuned, the show for animation lovers, recorded live on YouTube and also streaming on Patreon. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, I'm your host, Phil Machi. Wait a minute, I just botched something up. I'm still recording though. Whoa. There we go. All right. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Tonight's extra special show is dedicated to the one, the only, Nightmare Before Christmas. All that, and you'll have a chance to share your thoughts, questions, and opinions with me for a live Q&A after the show. Many have tried, but few films can go on to live in infamy. Yet that's precisely what Tim Burton's imaginative vision brought to the world back in 1993. Tonight's special episode is more than just a review of that film. As much as it is a look back, 25 years at a movie, it's a personal story for a legendary musician, a young cartoonist, and of course, a Skellington. But first, this.
Christmas will be ours! Isn't that wonderful? It couldn't be more wonderful. Well, surprised, aren't you? I want to tell you about Christmas Town. Making Christmas, making Christmas. What is this? Merry Christmas!
It's been 25 years since Tim Burton released a modern classic with his macabre take on perennial animated holiday specials. The Nightmare Before Christmas follows the tradition of Rankin Bass productions like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, The Year Without a Santa Claus, and Jack Frost. Burton himself described the tale as a sort of Grinch in reverse that he originally designed while working at Walt Disney Studios. Oddly enough, upon its original release, the film underperformed at the box office, but since then has grown into nothing short of a holiday empire. What is it about this monster mashup that still has fans buying merchandise in droves and dressing up as Jack Skellington and Sally each and every year? Is there some magic formula that keeps theaters re-releasing this film for Halloween? Or is it simply a case of cashing in on nostalgia? And before we dive into the spooky details of all that, I'd like to get a little personal, if I may. Nightmare is unique for me in that it became absolutely entwined into my teen years and beyond. It was released in October of 1993, not long before I entered high school. As a lifelong lover of stop-motion animation, skeletons, and all things Halloween, it felt like Nightmare Before Christmas was made especially for me. This was also a film that led the way to my love and appreciation of musician Danny Elfman, the singing voice of Jack Skellington. Elfman composed all of the music for the film, and his previous experience was as lead singer of Oingo Boingo, a band that became synonymous with skeletons and Halloween. A band that quickly became my absolute favorite. This, of course, This, of course, makes it difficult to review the film objectively, but at the same time, whenever I watch it, I am wonderfully reminded of why I love it so. Truth be told, I cannot give an unbiased opinion of the thing because it's so much a part of my personal identity. So instead, I present my completely biased review of Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, which we'll have to do. The story of a skeleton who longs for something more truly spoke to a teenage boy struggling to find himself. I would often sing the film's music in the shower and eventually performed Jack's Lament in my high school talent show. Face painted white and everything. There's something mysterious and exciting about the things that scare us. I think it's only natural that as a people, we assign meaning to these things to make them fun and familiar. But it's more than spooks and skeletons that gives this film longevity. Like most stories that strike a chord with people, this tale is multi-layered. On its surface, we get a creepy romp through a land of monsters with catchy songs and tons of eye candy. But beneath that coat of paint is something deeper. What do Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo have to do with an animated holiday film? Nightmare Before Christmas is about identity. Jack Skellington, also known as the Pumpkin King, is Halloween. And every year he does his level best to scare the living daylights out of people. He does so with such impeccable ease and style that the residents of Halloween Town elevated him to rock star status. Elfman himself at the time was a literal rock star. He'd been performing with the troupe that became the band since the late 70s, and their annual Halloween shows were something of a tradition. And as big as Oingo Boingo was, juggling stage shows and new albums in the early 90s competed with his ever-growing career as a film composer. As an aspiring cartoonist, I was struggling to find myself artistically around that same time. It wasn't until 1996 that I finally landed on my first long-running comic strip series, Livestock. Aligning my own identity with a comic strip series was immensely important to me and had been a lifelong dream. It was also around this time I discovered Oingo Boingo. Jack Skellington is an artist too, and every Halloween, Jack creates the scares of legends. But like any artist, the challenge of topping oneself becomes seemingly insurmountable. The pressures of audience expectations and personal goals can create a kind of block. Longing for something he can't even describe for himself, Jack wandered the woods all night after a melancholy lament. In unfamiliar territory, Jack found himself surrounded by a series of wooden doors in a circle of trees. Unbeknownst to him, each door represented a different holiday theme, but the only one that captured the forlorn skeleton man's attention was shaped like a Christmas tree. Inexplicably drawn towards the ornamental entryway, Jack opened the door and was whisked away inside. And like some divine inspiration granted, Jack was transported right before the pristine village of Christmastown. With his dreams made as real as his skull, he eagerly explored every nook and cranny of the snowy sanctuary. Every handmade toy, every affectionate act, Jack was taken with it all. And the big red icing on the cake was none other than Santa Claus, whom Jack misinterpreted as Sandy Claus. Sandy Claus. Eager to share his newfound joy with all of Halloween, Jack held a town meeting immediately. But much to his dismay, it seemed the creatures he called friends were only concerned with creating terror. So, Jack built up the one thing he knew would satisfy their insatiable appetites, and that was Sandy Claus himself. The townsfolk were thrilled, but for all the wrong reasons. More frustrated than ever, Jack tried to understand Christmas through use of the scientific method. But no matter what crazy experiments he ran, the Pumpkin King hit another brick wall and decided he didn't need to understand the meaning of Christmas when he could simply take it for his own. Under the spell of this Christmas time muse, Jack decided that this year it would be his turn to handle the holiday, with his own unique spin, of course. It's here that Sally, the rag doll miraculously brought to life by mad scientist Dr. Finkelstein, really comes into play. You see, up until now, she'd been mostly a background character. Sally, played by Catherine O'Hara, has this vision of things to come whilst plucking a thistle. She feared something awful was about to happen, and it was up to her to warn Jack. But Jack was so deluded with visions of sugar plums, he couldn't see reason. Instead, he assigned Sally the task of making his bright red jumpsuit a la Saint Nick. In turn, Jack gave the all-important job of nabbing Sandy Claus to Halloween's finest trick-or-treaters, Lock, Shock, and Barrel. These clearly naughty children, seriously, why did Jack think they could be trusted, not only kidnapped the fat man, but they brought him to their leader, Oogie Boogie. Played by the perfectly boisterous Ken Page, Oogie is a big ol' burlap sack of bugs with a fondness for gambling and also eating insects. Now, here's where the film truly lives up to its name. Jack dispenses all manner of grisly ghoul, much to the dismay of families everywhere. Presents gone berserk, giant spiral snakes, and man-eating wreaths wreak havoc in people's homes. And even though military forces were brought in to shoot Jack and his skeletal reindeer out of the sky, Santa was nowhere to be found. It looked as if Christmas would have to be canceled. And here's the turning point that, to this day, I find so refreshing. I find so refreshing, so inspiring, so perfect for this film. After a bumpy sleigh ride, to put it mildly, Jack laid motionless, caught in the arms of a cemetery angel. He laments once more, calling back to his original dilemma in the Halloween Town graveyard. No one really understood him, even when he explained it to them on a stage. But after poor Jack's moment of woe, he wasn't rescued or encouraged by a friend. Jack self-actualized that he had tried his best, he gave it his all, and next year things would be different. He was inspired once more to embrace Halloween and thus himself. Dusting himself off, Jack remembered he still needed to retrieve Santa, who alone could set things right with Christmas. After a proper duel with Oogie, Jack literally unraveled the big guy's plans and saved the day. And Santa was off to work in a flash. Jack and Sally finally got their long-awaited reunion, ending in romance, and the two holidays experienced a shared moment of understanding. Snow magically found its way to Halloween Town for the first time, while Santa flew overhead for a short but sweet resolution. But is that really where our story ends? Well, if you look to the soundtrack, we do get a more rounded out finale. Narrated by Sir Patrick Stewart, the opening poem, heard only partially in the movie itself, is fully realized on the album, as told from the point of view of Santa himself. Quote, "And finally, everything worked out just fine. Christmas was saved, though there wasn't much time. But after that night, things were never the same. Each holiday now knew the other one's name. And though that one Christmas things got out of hand, I'm still rather fond of that skeleton man. So, many years later, I thought I'd drop in. And there was old Jack, still looking quite thin, with 4 or 5 skeleton children at hand, playing strange little tunes in their xylophone band. And I asked old Jack, 'Do you remember the night when the sky was so dark and the moon shone so bright, when a million small children pretending to sleep nearly didn't have Christmas at all, so to speak, and would, if you could, turn that mighty clock back to that long, fateful night. Now, think carefully, Jack. Would you do the whole thing all over again, knowing what you know now, knowing what you knew then? And he smiled like the old pumpkin king that I knew, then turned and asked softly of me, wouldn't you? It was, end quote. It was worth the journey after all. Despite the setbacks, two worlds discovered one another, and Jack learned he had everything he needed inside him all along. And in turn, in front of him too, as far as Sally was concerned. You know, whenever I listen to that poem, I can't help but think of Oingo Boingo, which in its own right used xylophones to play strange little tunes. And though Elfman eventually left his band after 17 years, he embraced one final Halloween stage show in 1995 in true Pumpkin King style. The band continues to play to this day without Elfman, but in an almost poetic twist of fate, he returned to one of their most famous songs, Dead Man's Party. This has happened during the last 3 years of Nightmare Before Christmas concerts, to the absolute joy of fans who still miss his Halloween antics. Much like Jack embracing Halloween, it's been amazing seeing Elfman following suit in his own way. The music of Nightmare is as much a part of the film as the physical characters that inhabit it. Danny Elfman masterfully created 11 songs in true musical theater style, as well as the accompanying score. These songs started coming together before a final script was in place. Elfman based his compositions off of Burton's drawings and from shared conversations about each scene. In addition to performing the singing voice of Jack Skellington, whose speaking voice was provided by Chris Sarandon, Elfman also played Beryl and the Clown with the Tearaway Face. Each song properly serves the story by revealing the internal struggles, desires, and motivations of the characters singing them. From the brooding anguish of Jack's lament to the big band theatrics of Oogie Boogie's song, the soundtrack to Nightmare is catchy and begs to be sung along with. One of the more ingenious musical choices, and a personal favorite of mine, is in the song Making Christmas. The monsters of Halloween Town all excitedly put together a truly terrifying collection of tricks and treats for unsuspecting boys and girls worldwide. Thematically, the song borrows heavily from the Latin hymn Dies Irae, the opening melody of which is among the most quoted musical segments in history. It refers to the religious concept of the Day of Wrath, and the first 4 notes are the key. Indeed, hearing Dies Irae immediately calls to mind Making Christmas. Even the visuals allude to the Day of Wrath, as both holiday towns feature their countdown until Christmas Day calendars. The rest of the score blends the Papa influences of German Volkstümlich music with the sensibilities of Jewish folk music. It all combines in a melodic and timeless way for a soundtrack that bears repeating. I find the film's enduring legacy something of a marvel. Over the past 25 years, Nightmare continues to gain popularity and even spawned a reissued tribute album in 2006, with artists like Panic at the Disco, Fiona Apple, and Marilyn Manson providing covers. A new tradition in the Disney theme parks started in 2001 when Disney's beloved spook house, The Haunted Mansion, received a makeover worthy of Halloween Town itself. Haunted Mansion Holiday now runs from September through January in both the Anaheim and Tokyo parks. Featuring several of the original members of the film's cast, The ride even has its own original soundtrack, inspired by the film. While the ride music is based around Elfman's themes, its soundtrack is a mixture of work from John Debney and Gordon Goodwin. Overall, the film is very much a realization of Tim Burton's original concept, but it should be noted that Henry Selick, director of Coraline, was the director for Nightmare. Burton served as the film's producer, and of course, it was his original poem and character designs that determined the overall art direction. It is this art direction that I believe produces so much of the film's charm. As we travel between the three distinct worlds of the gray and gloomy Halloween town, bright and cheery Christmas town, and incredibly plain and suburban real world. It took over 100 artists and technicians 3 years to animate a film that, at the time, was unparalleled in terms of technical achievements. Combining 230 stunningly detailed sets, textured with carved clay and plaster, and over 60 characters, resulting in hundreds of puppets, all efforts came together to create a living illustration in the vein of the works of artists Edward Gorey and Ronald Searle. Besides the hundreds of replacement heads necessary for forming complicated speech patterns, replacement eyes were used to simulate blinking for Jack Skellington. And on top of all these intricate physical aspects, smoke, lightning, and fire effects were composited in for a truly visceral effect. Not to mention the hand-drawn elements, such as cartoon ghosts carrying physical props. To put it all in perspective, this is a film that was shot at 24 frames per second. That means animators posed a character 24 times and took 24 pictures to get just 1 second of film, which resulted in 1 week's worth of effort for just 1 minute. Part of the magic of Nightmare, for me, is how well it holds up. I recently treated myself to yet another theatrical viewing this October, and was amazed that I could still look to the backgrounds for hidden surprises. To this day, some of my favorite moments are the little details of side characters, like the Grim Reaper, and a cute moment when one of the hanging tree skeletons scratches an itch on the back of its head. Rating this film almost seems ridiculous because, in many ways, it has become the standard by which every stop-motion film is now compared. But you know what? Somebody has to set the bar, and that is why I'm giving The Nightmare Before Christmas 10 out of 10 tender lumplings. You know, part of the inspiration for Burton's Nightmare poem was, of course, the classic holiday poem, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, first published in 1823. This is a poem that was read in my family when I was a child, so it has special meaning to me. As a cartoonist, I too adapted and parodied this poem in 2010, with the themes and characters from my own comic strip series, Retail Sunshine, in a book called 'Twas the Day After Turkey. And so, in the spirit, see what I did there, of shared poetic interests, instead of the usual musical intermission, tonight's show features a special recitation of Tim Burton's original poem that inspired the film. It was late one fall in Halloween land, and the air had quite a chill. Against the moon a skeleton sat, alone upon a hill. He was tall and thin, with a bat bow tie. Jack Skellington was his name. He was tired and bored in Halloween land. I'm sick of the scaring, the terror, the fright. I'm tired of being something that goes bump in the night. I'm bored with my leering, I'm bored with leering my horrible glances, and my feet hurt from dancing those skeleton dances. I don't like graveyards, and I need something new. There must be more to life than just yelling, boo! Then out from a grave, with a curl and a twist, came a whimpering, whining, spectral mist. It was a little ghost dog with a faint little bark, and a jack-o'-lantern nose that glowed in the dark. It was Jack's dog, Zero, the best friend he had. But Jack hardly noticed, which made Zero sad. All that night and through the next day, Jack wandered and walked. He was filled with dismay. Then, deep in the forest, just before night, Jack came upon an amazing sight. Not 20 feet from the spot where he stood were 3 massive doorways carved in wood. He stood before them, completely in awe, his gaze transfixed by one special door. Entranced and excited, with a slight sense of worry, Jack opened the door to a white, windy flurry. Jack didn't know it, but he'd fallen down in the middle of a place called Christmas Town. Immersed in the light, Jack was no longer haunted. He had finally found the feeling he wanted. And so that his friends wouldn't think him a liar, he took the present-filled stockings that hung by the fire. He took candy and toys that were stacked on the shelves and a picture of Santa with all of his elves. He took lights and ornaments from the star. He took lights and ornaments and the star from the tree. And from the Christmas Town sign, he took the big letter C. He picked up everything that sparkled or glowed. He even picked up a handful of snow. He grabbed it all, and without being seen, he took it all back to Halloween. Back in Halloween, a group of Jack's peers stared in amazement at his Christmas souvenirs. For this wondrous vision, none were prepared. Most were excited, though a few were quite scared. For the next few days, while it lightened and thundered, Jack sat alone and obsessively wondered, why is it they get to spread laughter and cheer, while we stalk the graveyards, spreading panic and fear? Well, I could be Santa, and I could spread cheer. Why does he get to do it, year after year? Outraged by injustice, Jack thought, and he thought. Then he got an idea. Yes, why not? In Christmas Town, Santa was making some toys, when through the din he heard a soft noise. He answered the door, and to his surprise, he saw weird little creatures in strange disguise. They were altogether ugly and rather petite, and as they opened their sacks, they yelled, "Trick or treat!" Then a confused Santa was shoved into a sack and taken to Halloween to see Mastermind Jack. In Halloween, everyone gathered once more, for they'd never seen a Santa before. And as they cautiously gazed at this strange old man, Jack related to Santa his masterful plan. "My dear Mr. Claus, I think it's a crime that you've got to be Santa all of the time. But now I will give presents, and I will spread cheer. We're changing places. I'm Santa this year. It is I who will say Merry Christmas to you, so you may lie in my coffin, creak doors, and yell boo. And please, Mr. Claus, don't think ill of my plan, for I'll do the best Santa job that I can." And though Jack and his friends thought they'd do a good job, their idea of Christmas was still quite macabre. They were packed up and ready on Christmas Eve day, when Jack hitched his reindeer to his sleek coffin sleigh. But on Christmas Eve, as they were about to begin, a Halloween fog slowly rolled in. Jack said, "We can't leave. This fog's just too thick. There will be no Christmas, and I can't be Saint Nick." Then a small glowing light pierced through the fog. What could it be? It was Zero, Jack's dog. Jack said, "Zero, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight?" And to be so needed was Zero's great dream. So he joyously flew to the head of the team, and as the skeletal sleigh started its ghostly flight, Jack cackled, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." 'Twas the nightmare before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was peaceful, not even a mouse. The stockings all hung by the chimney with care, when opened that morning would cause quite a scare. The children all nestled so snug in their beds would have nightmares of monsters and skeleton heads. The moon that hung over the new fallen snow cast an eerie pall over the city below. And Santa Claus's laughter now sounded like groans, and the jingling bells like chattering bones. And what to their wondering eyes should appear but a coffin sleigh with skeleton deer, and a skeletal driver so ugly and sick they knew in a moment this can't be Saint Nick. From house to house, with a true sense of joy, Jack happily issued each present and toy. From rooftop to rooftop, he jumped and he skipped, leaving presents that seemed to be straight from a crypt. Yes. Unaware that the world was in panic and fear, Jack merrily spread his own brand of cheer. He visited the house of Susie and Dave. They got a Gumby and Porky from the grave. Then on to the home of little Jane Neiman. She got a baby doll, possessed by a demon. A monstrous train with tentacle tracks. A ghoulish puppet wielding an axe. A man-eating plant disguised as a wreath. And a vampire teddy bear with very sharp teeth. There were screams of terror, but Jack didn't hear it. He was much too involved with his own Christmas spirit. Jack finally looked down from his dark, starry frights and saw the commotion, the noise, and the light. Why, they're celebrating! It looks like such fun! They're thanking me for the good job that I've done. But what he thought were fireworks meant as goodwill were bullets and missiles intended to kill. Then, amidst the barrage of artillery fire, Jack urged Zero to go higher and higher. And away they all flew like the storm of a thistle, until they were hit by a well-guided missile. And as they fell on the cemetery, way out of sight, was heard, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." Jack pulled himself up on a large stone cross, and from there he reviewed his incredible loss. "I thought I could be Santa. I had such belief." Jack was confused and filled with great grief. Not knowing where to turn, he looked toward the sky Then he slumped on the grave, and he started to cry. And as Zero and Jack lay crumpled on the ground, they suddenly heard a familiar sound. "My dear Jack," said Santa, "I applaud your intent. I know wreaking such havoc was not what you meant. And so you are sad and feeling quite blue, but taking over Christmas was the wrong thing to do. I hope you realize Halloween's the right place for you. There's a lot more, Jack, that I'd like to say, but now I must hurry, for it's almost Christmas Day." Then he jumped in his sleigh, and with a wink of an eye, he said, "Merry Christmas!" and he bid them goodbye. Back home, Jack was sad, but then, like a dream, Santa brought Christmas to the land of Halloween. The end. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Thanks so much to all of you listening in live on YouTube. And if you enjoyed the show and would like to listen anytime, why don't you join me over on Patreon at patreon.com/Phil Machi and become a subscriber today. Not only are there cool rewards, but you can also stream this show anytime you like, which means never missing an episode. For more fun, check out my original comics at retailsunshine.com, and you can interact with me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook under the handles of both Retail Sunshine and Phil Machi. Also, you can keep up to date with the latest animation news by visiting this show at facebook.com/Stay Tuned Show. I've been Phil Machi, you've been a wonderful audience, and until next time, keep those eyeballs peeled, those ears open, and be sure to stay tuned. Ooh, man, that was a workout. Holy cow. Welcome to the after party, everybody. Thanks so much for being here on this extra special night. Very, very much appreciated with Pumpkin King Jack in tow. And I do thank everybody for being here. And of course, I thank all my subscribers. Thanks so much. Thank you to Elizabeth, who said I killed it. Whatever it was, it's laying there dead, apparently. And I want to thank the Rubber Hose subscribers, first of all. Diana Abenadar, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. I always forget how I'm supposed to pronounce your name. And Ronita Davis, thanks to you both for being Rubber Hose subscribers. If you're wondering what a Rubber Hose subscriber is, if you head over to my Patreon page, you can check out the different tiers. And Rubber Hose subscribers are able to get a couple extra perks. And one of those perks is having their name mentioned every single week. Excuse me. My body is starting to catch back up now that I've been having labored pauses and brief breaths throughout the evening. Anyway, and I've got a cat sitting by my side who very much wants my attention but does not want to be picked up, so that's always fun. Welcome to the after party. If you'd like to throw any questions, comments, or shared memories of this fantastic film, please do so now, and I will read your comments and we will address them on the air as always. Let me see if I missed any comments.